Hello? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting today, October 14th. My name is Joan Keston, and I'm the acting chairman for the commission. Hearings before the Historic Preservation Commission are quasi-judicial in nature. This is a design review process to determine if the proposed project is congruous with the special character of the historic district or landmark. Decisions of the Commission are based on the record of these proceedings, the Wilmington Design Standards for Historic Districts and Landmarks, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Evidence submitted to the Commission for review becomes part of the record. Appeals of Commission decisions are to the Wilmington Board of Adjustment and then to Superior Court and are based on the record. Appeals must be filed within 30 days of the date of the Commission's action. Evidence is received during the evidentiary hearing portion of an agenda item. Those who want to address the Commission are sworn as witnesses to present material and substantial evidence to the Commission. The Chair recognizes those who want to submit such evidence during the evidentiary hearing. Evidence should be directed to the Commission. To ensure that evidence is properly recorded, please come to the podium to address the Commission, state your name and address, and speak clearly. A brief reminder that members of the HPC are appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the City Council. Our charge is to respect to the protection and preservation of properties in the city's designated historic district. We are held to the standards of the Wilmington Design Standards for Historic Districts and Landmarks and per applicable North Carolina state law to determine if exterior changes are congruous with the special character of the city's historic districts. It is important that we deliberate at the merits of each request in a manner that provides a record as to the basis for our decisions. Please remember that our deliberation should be centered on how a project meets the design standards and whether the proposed change is congruous or is not congruous. Commissioners, if you have received or been aware of any outside evidence related to any of the matters, please recuse yourself. At this time, I would like to request that all cell phones be either turned off or in silent mode. Thank you. Please, I would like to introduce the commissioners.
Kathleen Egan.
Stephen Sulkey.
Christopher Yermal.
Michael Smith.
Marianne Kaiser.
Also present as Amy Bradshaw, Planning Coordinator, Christine Hughes, Senior Planner, Melissa Huffman, Assistant City Attorney, Ivy Freitag, Preservation Planner, and is Jeff here? No? Okay. All those who wish to speak, will they please stand to be sworn in?
If everyone who wishes to speak could please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you.
First on the agenda, we'll approve the minutes from the September 9th meeting. Does anybody have any comments to make?
I just have one. Page 3. I think it is the third paragraph in the bottom. I think it should say cast iron planters and not cast iron plants. It is? Oh, I beg your pardon. I was wrong on that one.
Anything else? A motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
At this time, I would like to take a moment to recognize and honor our former chairman, Rob Romero. Rob was the member of the Historic Preservation Commission for about 10 years and has served the last 4 years, or 4 years of that time, as chairman. And he terminated his service in June of this year. Okay, so our first item.
I'm going to recuse myself from this first item, actually.
And as Ivy is coming up to the podium, this item I wanted to remind you all is one that came before you a couple of months ago. So when you're considering the competent material and substantial evidence upon which to base your decision, you can consider what happened at the previous public meeting. You can also consider all of the evidence that you hear today. If you all went to the site and made any observations that you think would be helpful in decision-making, please bring that up during your deliberations process so that the entire commission can consider it as well. And just, I know this is an unusual item. This is, I think, the first time that we all have dealt with this. So just want to make sure we know our standard and that we're keeping our minds open to the evidence that you may hear today, because the applicant is now represented by an attorney, so you may hear some additional facts you did not get at the last meeting.
So this is the City Market building. It was built in 1879 and is a contributing resource to the historic district. The property is located at 124 Front Street and extends the full length of the block down to South Water Street. The property is located in the Central Business District, Historic District overlay. The application before you today is for the removal of the contributing status of the building for the purpose of retaining the full allowable building height in the Central Business District. Section 18-196K of the Land Development Code states that an applicant may seek approval to remove the contributing status of the building for the purpose of retaining allowable building height. The applicant must apply to the Historic Preservation Commission to remove the status and must demonstrate that the building has little or no significance in 4 categories, and when scored, has a total combined score of less than 6 points. Approval of the request does not modify the status of the building for any other purpose beyond retaining its allowable building height. Here are photographs of the current building. The top photo shows the front elevation along South Front Street. The bottom photo shows the rear elevation along Water Street. The next few photographs will help show the evolution of the building. Here's a postcard of the City Market building not long after it was constructed in 1879. Here's a photograph from the 1970s. And here's a photograph of the building as it exists today. Significant modifications have been made to the building since initial construction. Archival data indicates the building has undergone at least 3 significant exterior renovations. According to the book, Wilmington, North Carolina, An Architectural and Historical Portrait, the building was built in 1879 and underwent renovations in 1912, 1919, 1930, 1944, and 1960. The building opened in 1880, and soon after, it was purchased by the city in 1882. In 1919, at the expiration of the market lease, the building was converted to an auditorium. In 1923, it was a produce market for farm products and functioned only between auditorium uses. In 1930, it was renovated again for full market use. After renovation took place in 1944 for an unidentified use. And then again in 1960, the City Council sold the building and it was renovated for office use. Staff found 2 previous approvals to demolish the City Market building by the Historic Preservation Commission. On September 20th, 1983, the HPC granted approval to demolish the building after determining it had lost its significance. At the time, local historian Ed Turnberg, then chair of the HPC, noted that architecturally and historically, the building has lost a lot of its significance through serious alterations. The HPC again granted approval for demolition on April 18, 1989, to demolish the building due to structural limitations and foundation issues, and based on research presented to the HPC at the 1983 meeting demonstrating the building had little architectural significance. In light of the building's history, the applicant is seeking approval to remove the contributing status of the building for the purpose of retaining the allowable building height in accordance with the provisions set forth in Section 18-196K of the Land Development Code. The applicant has submitted a proposed scorecard with a total score of .25 out of a possible 12 points. According to the code, if the score is less than 6 points, then the building has little to no significance. With that, we would like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Any questions for staff? Ivy, do you know when that was taken down to 1 story?
That part, unfortunately, was not made clear in any of the research that we were able to to review.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come to the podium? Please state your name and address.
We're loud shoes, sorry. My name is Samuel Potter. I'm an attorney here in Wilmington with the firm Hodges, Cox & Potter. I'm here with the owner, Eric Hemingway of ER Quiver Family Partnership. To his right and to your left is David Lyle, an architect here in Wilmington. And to Mr. Hemingway's left and your right is Tim Hines, a professional engineer here. As Ms. Huffman said at the beginning of this hearing, this is a quasi-judicial hearing based on the evidence. And it has to be based on the evidence that presented to you today here, not based on anything other than that or based on anything other than material competent evidence, which is why we have these professionals here to talk about professional things. You should have on your screens in front of you, I think, a PowerPoint presentation that we've put together. And to provide a little more light on the Wilmington Code that we're asking you to follow, it's Section 18196K of the Wilmington Code of Ordinances. And it provides for the removal of a structure in the historic district from contributing historic structure status based on 4 specific criteria. And by the end of the presentation that the owner is going to put on today, it should be clear that those 4 criteria are met by this property. The first set of criteria, it's actually the last set of criteria. Our engineer has some place to be, so I want to get him up here first today to talk about the engineering status of the building. The ordinance is written such that you assume that all 3 points get awarded for structural integrity unless the applicant presents a written structural engineer's report certifying that the building is structurally inadequate under either the North Carolina Rehab Code, the North Carolina Existing Buildings Code, or Chapter 34 of the North Carolina Building Code. So in other words, if we come in with a written report that certifies to you that the building is structurally inadequate under those codes, then we've met our burden on that particular matter. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hines, who is a professional engineer. You have in your packet of materials a letter that Mr. Hines has submitted regarding the structural inadequacy of the building. I'll have him come up and testify about that.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Yes, Tim Hines, 238 Inlet Point Drive, Wilmington.
Good.
Okay? I'm just here to just verify that I did inspect the building. I did write this letter. It is based on the North Carolina Existing Building Code. And, you know, basically the building in just about every part of it is structurally inadequate.
Any questions, staff? Vern?
I'll just clarify. I see you're with Elm Builders, and perhaps that's your company. Are you an engineer?
Yes, I'm a professional engineer, structural.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you much.
I mentioned that we're taking this a little bit in reverse order. That was to get Mr. Hines in and out of here because he has a prior obligation. The actual first category in your ordinance has to do with cultural significance. And I know you all had a workshop on this last month to kind of go through this checklist. But there is a proposed score sheet that's in your materials on page 3 that might be a little easier to follow along. Cultural significance is divided into two subcategories. One has to do with whether the structure is associated with events of the lives of persons who have made a significant contribution to local, state, or national history. And the second is whether the structure represents the work of a well-known or highly regarded builder, architect, or other person who was involved in the concept, planning, construction, or use of the building. I believe Ms. Freitag's testimony certainly goes to those factors, but I also have Mr. Hemingway, the owner of the property, who's conducted extensive research on the property in the North Carolina room at the local public library, as well as other resources that are available to him to speak to those matters.
Good evening. Eric Hemingway, 1705 Chestnut Street.
Thank you.
Is this, you want this down so I can, is it clear?
No, you're supposed to have it on.
Okay, gotcha. So I bought this property in early 2020, and before I bought the property, I wanted to do research and just find out the history about it. So I spent almost 2 days at the North Carolina room at the top floor of the library and just kind of gathered everything I could find on this, going through old newspaper reports and any detailed information I could find, and couldn't uncover anything about a significant architect, contractor, owner, occupant in my research. So as Ivy mentioned earlier, I couldn't even find real clear information on when it was reduced from the 3-story original structure to the single story. There was a fire in 1890s, but it wasn't clear if that's when it was reduced. But all through the first part of the 20th century, I couldn't find any information as far as what was going on, who owned it, or what, other than the use. So, any questions for me?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I trust you all recognize the photograph on the screen there is what's right there. Culturally significant. The next two categories, and again, this is on page 3 of your info packet, have to do with the architectural integrity and architectural style of the building. With respect to architectural integrity, there are two sub-factors. One is that the standard is maintain its integrity of its original architectural form. And we saw during Ms. Freitag's presentation the dramatic difference between the original structure and the current one. It's hard to believe that it's actually the same building. The second has to do with changes made to the structure over the last 50 years have since acquired architectural significance. I'm not qualified to testify about that, but I have somebody that is. The third category is architectural style, and it has 4 subsections. And rather than stand here and read them to you, you can see what they say. And we have David Lyle, an architect, operates a lot in downtown Wilmington, here to speak to the architectural integrity and style of the building. Yeah, so you just, when you're ready to go to the next one, you just click.
David Lyle, 614 Market. I'm an architect here in town, and I do lots of different types of work, but a lot of historic renovation as well. As you can see in the photograph, the original building, being the 3-story, has a lot of significance and a lot of history to it. Over the years, it's been modified, and as you can tell, that it has no resemblance to the original structure. Even though it may have some of the same substructure, it's been renovated many times. Even the brick face itself is a veneer that's been put on top. And as you go back and you look at the work that's been done over that time, if you look at the character of it, there's no significant brickwork, there's no significant detailing, Even the window openings have been modified to basic just storefront, and they're not in the original location. And so as we look at this in architectural terms, it would be considered a very basic architecture, very utilitarian, and not an architectural significance in any way. If you have any questions, though, please feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I mentioned at the beginning, our job is to come up to you and present evidence on each of the factors that are set out in your code of ordinances and in the spreadsheet or the checklist that's in front of you. You've heard from Mr. Hines, Mr. Hemingway, and Mr. Lyle about each of those factors in a way that meets the standard of competent material evidence. The people that are testified before you are either professionals or they're the property owner who's intimately familiar with the property. So with that being said, it's our contention that we've met our burden to establish material and competent evidence of each of the relevant factors, and we would ask you to approve our request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, anyone? Okay. Thank you. We will now open the evidentiary proceeding. Anyone who wishes to submit evidence is asked to come to the podium. Please state your name and address and present your evidence. Anyone? Hereby close the evidentiary portion. Any deliberation? So do we all just vote on the number, or how do we do this?
Yes, I would ask the commission or the chair, apologies, to call for a motion. Each HBC member would then therefore vote to represent their scoring of the scorecard as outlined by the Land Development Code. So if you were to vote in favor of it, of removing the contributing status, then that would mean that there was less than 6 points on your scorecard. If it was 6 or more, then you would vote against.
Kathy, do you want to start?
Oh, I think we need to call for a motion.
Oh, motion first, or do we each person give it? Anyone want a motion on this?
I move to approve the request to remove the contributing status of the building for the purpose of retaining, sorry, my glasses are fogging, retaining the full allowable building height in the Central Business District at 124 South Front Street and adopt the proposed finding of fact. Details as shown in the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statement contained in the application and submittal materials and statements made at this meeting are a part of the request unless otherwise noted. The motion is based on the evidence presented before us, the application submittals, testimony, staff reports, including the findings of facts. Applicable Land Development Code, Section 18-196K, Central Business District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. That's pretty easy.
So this is the Burris Meyer House, and it was built in circa 1900. It is a contributing resource to the historic district. The property is located at 412 Church Street and is within the historic district residential. In this district, alterations to all facades of a building and site are subject to design review, regardless of if they can be seen from the public right-of-way. The application before you today is for after-the-fact removal of the siding, window, doors, and some trim, and approval for the proposed new replacement siding, windows, and doors. On August 13th of this year, a stop work order was posted on the property, and a notice of violation was sent on August 23rd. All the exterior siding, windows, and doors had been removed without a certificate of appropriateness at the time the stop work order was posted. Staff did discuss the local historic district requirements with the owner on April 6, 2021, and the agent on April 27, 2021. The department received a complaint about potential work being done without a COA, and our code enforcement officer went out the same day to find the siding, windows, and doors had been removed, at which time the stop work order was posted. The applicant is proposing to install wood siding with a 4.5-inch reveal, Sierra Pacific fir wood windows with a 2/2 configuration to match what was there previously, and Sierra Pacific wood doors are proposed with 2 solid lower panels and upper glazing. The application did not include a proposal for the front porch ceiling material or the rear stairs and railings for access to the 2 rear doors. As such, there is a condition for the Commission's consideration to have the final design submitted for review through the administrative bypass process. Here's a photograph of the house back in 1982, a photograph of the house from 2004, and a little bit more recent photograph from 2016. The design standards state that original windows and doors shall be retained and preserved. If a window or door requires replacement, it should match the original in size, scale, proportion, material, and detail. It is not appropriate to install entrance doors or windows that create a false historic appearance or the appearance of an earlier era. With that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Thank you, Ivy. Any questions for Ivy? Thank you, Ivy. Would the applicant like to come to the podium and speak?
Blake Brown, 126 Tambridge Road. So our goal here is to restore it exactly to the historical integrity that it once had. Same color siding, same doors, same windows. Some of the pictures that weren't shown here don't show. They show the neglect that was caused to not keeping up with the house. The previous owner, there was trees and foliage growing through the windows and siding. So when we originally started to just kind of take down the siding to repair and inspect, there was parts of the house that literally fell off. And just to put it in perspective, there was a hoarder living there that we took about 14 loads to the dump just from, we couldn't even walk into the house. So yeah, our intention is just to do exactly as Ivy said, to bring it back to the integrity it once had, same reveal on the siding, try to almost identically match, if as much as possible, the windows and doors.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have one simple question.
Sure.
Apparently, you spoke with staff in April. Why did you begin all this work without a COA? I was just curious about your mindset.
Yeah, so this was honestly our first home that we've bought, and there was just some miscommunication and negligence on our part, and we weren't present when some of the contractors were hired to do some of the work, and they just started to remove a lot of that because of the state that it was in, and that was miscommunication between myself and the contractor that was there. One part while I was actually out of town and working on a couple other jobs too, so just kind of got carried away and out of hand. Then by the time it was halfway removed, I had planned to submit for that COA, but we actually couldn't do a COA because it was so bad that we originally planned to actually try to repair the siding, but it was so bad that we decided we had to just replace it. So he kind of acted on my behalf when he started to just remove everything.
So one board led to another, and eventually there are no boards left. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So,
And I think this is the first time you've taken on the rehab of a house in the district.
Correct.
And the owner of the property was also part of this discussion in August, is that right?
Correct, Brooks, yeah.
And the two of you didn't talk that you needed a COA and that you would be applying for that?
We actually did, yeah, we did speak, but he actually was in the process of moving from New York to LA, and there was negligence, like I said, just in miscommunication and dates and times and things like that, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I will now open the evidentiary proceeding. Anyone wishing to submit evidence is asked to come to the podium. Please state your name and address and present your evidence. Anyone? Have you been sworn in? Yes. Okay, thank you.
My name is Yolanda Markle, and I live in 414 Church Street, right next door to this house. And if I can say anything, is to encourage that this has been going on for a long time. You know, you saw how it disintegrated. That any encouragement, any help, anything that can be done to facilitate this in an appropriate, timely manner, and also when the work is being done in a more considerate way. You know, a lot of lumber was piled up against our house, which we had to remove because it was against our wooden siding, so that it didn't, you know, it will not interfere with the buildings next door on all the sides. And I just want to encourage that this be done in an appropriate wonder to restore this was a beautiful old house.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That closes the evidentiary proceeding. Deliberations among the commissioners. Anyone?
Basically, it's done. They're going to restore it to the look it had before. I mean, at this point, what other choice is there?
Okay. Motion?
There's not. Should we add the condition that the workers in the future be considerate of neighboring property? Is that okay? All right, in that case, I would move to approve with conditions the request for the after-the-fact siding, window, and door removal, and for the replacement siding, window, and doors at 412 Church Street, and to adopt the proposed findings of facts. Details as shown on the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statement contained in the application and supplemental materials and statements made at this meeting are a part of this request. This motion is based on the evidence presented before us, the application submittals, testimony, the staff report, including the findings of fact. I think that the following conditions shall be applied to ensure compliance with the design standards, those that were set forth in the staff report, numbers 1 through 9, and to add that, you know, workers in the future be considerate of the neighboring properties and property owners. I believe the proposed request with conditions does comply with the Wilmington design standards for historic districts and landmarks, is compatible with the materials, features, design, context, and character of the historic building and the historic district in which it is located, and is congruous with the site, streetscape, and historic aspects of the historic residential as a whole. Applicable design standards, 1.6, Secretary of the Interior standards, standards 2 through 9, 3.2, windows and doors, standards 1 through 4, 6, 12, and 13, and 3.5, exterior walls and decorative woodwork, standards 2 through 4, 3.6, porches and entrances, standards 1, 2, and 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3. Item number 3.
I'm going to recuse myself from this item also.
So this house was built in circa 1870, and it is a contributing resource to the historic district. The property is located at 312 South 6th Street and is within the historic district residential. In this district, alterations to all facades and the site Alterations to all facades of a building and the site are subject to design review, regardless of whether they can be seen from the public right-of-way. The application before you today is for window and door alterations to the existing rear addition and alterations to 2 windows on the rear half of the south elevation. Here's an aerial of the property showing the rear half of the building where the existing addition is located and where the alterations will occur on the building. Here you can see the rear of the house. You're looking southeast. And here you have the rear of the building where you can see the existing 1-story rear addition and the existing door on the 2nd floor rear of the house. The applicant is proposing to replace the 1st floor fixed window to the left of the door with a pine clear glass casement window. The existing 1st floor aluminum door would be replaced with a pine door with upper glazing and a solid lower panel. The existing 1st floor glass panels to the right of the door would be replaced with 4-panel pine casement windows. Up on the 2nd floor rear elevation, there's an existing door that leads nowhere. There's no archival data that shows a porch or balcony ever existed here. So for safety purposes, they are proposing to replace this door with a pine 2/2 window to match the configuration on the house. Here's another viewpoint of the rear of the house and the existing 1-story rear elevation. The applicant proposes to replace the vertical glass panels on the side with 4-panel pine casement windows. On the far right, you can see 2 windows on the previous rear addition. The applicant is proposing to replace these glass panels with pine double-hung 2/2 windows to match the configuration of the windows on the main house. The design standards state that windows reflect the architectural style and age of a building, but also indicate changes in technology. Windows are among the character-defining features of a building. The Secretary of the Interior standards do not recommend changes to openings on primary or highly visible elevations that would alter the character of the building. Necessary changes should occur on secondary or more inconspicuous locations. With that, we'd like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Any questions for staff?
I have a question. On the stained glass, the transom in the window, do we know the age of that, how long it's been in the house?
We don't. The homeowner might have a little insight into that, but we're pretty sure that it was added when one of the rear additions were added. Originally, I believe the Sanborn maps indicated there were actually 4 additions tacked on to the rear of this building, and then at some point in time, 2 of those were removed, and then you just have these remaining. So at some point during the 2 removals, potentially this window had been installed.
Okay, thank you.
Any idea, Ivy, when the gingerbread came off? It's kind of like the city market. It's hardly recognizable anymore.
Yeah.
Any idea when that was removed?
For
the
the
1998 picture that shows all the pretty gingerbread in the front. It's a quaint.
Oh, yes, sorry. I believe it was around 2006. We found a COA regarding the front porch. Yeah.
And that was allowed to come off.
It would seem so.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Ivy. Would the applicant like to come forward? Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Peter Mixon. I live at 1605 Ann Street in Wilmington. Unless there are questions or comments, which I'm happy to address or answer, I'm willing to submit it on the staff report.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
I will open the evidentiary portion of the meeting. Does anyone wish to present evidence? No one? That closes the evidentiary portion. Deliberations among the commissioners? Motion?
Make a motion. I move to approve with conditions the request for window and door alterations on the rear elevation and alterations to 2 windows on the south elevation of the house at 312 South 6th Street, and to adopt the proposed findings of fact. Details as shown on the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statement contained in the application and supplemental materials, and statements made at the meeting are part of the request unless otherwise noted. This motion is based on the evidence presented before us, the application submittals, testimony, staff report, and including the findings of fact. The following conditions will be applied to ensure compliance with the design standards, those set forth in the staff report numbers 1 through 4. The proposed request with conditions complies with the Wilmington design standards for historic districts and landmarks and is compatible with the materials, features, design, context, and character of the historic building and the historic district in which it is located. It is congruous with the site, streetscape, and historic aspects of the historic district residential as a whole. Applicable design standards, 1.6, Secretary of the Interior Standards, Standards 2 and 9, 3.2, Windows and Doors, Standards 6, 12, and 13.
Second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4.
So this is the Langdon House, and it was built circa 1808 and is a contributing resource to the historic district. Property is located at 314 Orange Street and is within the historic district residential. In this district, alterations to all facades of a building and site are subject to design review, regardless of whether they can be seen from the public right-of-way. The application before you today is for the replacement of 2 exterior doors on the west side of the house. Here's an aerial view of the property showing the location of the 2 doors proposed for replacement. Doors 1 and 2 are on the west elevation towards the middle rear half of the building, towards the middle rear and half. The applicant states that the doors are in bad condition and do not match any other doors on the house. Door 1, nearer to Orange Street, is a 2-panel wood door with a 1/1 configuration. Door 2, nearer the rear of the property, is a 5-panel wood door with a horizontal panel configuration. The applicant proposes to replace both doors with a pine 4-panel door painted rockwood medium brown. It would have a 2/2 vertical panel configuration. According to a 1985 COA, excluding the front door, the other exterior doors on the house were all 4-panel doors. The design standards state that the historic districts have a broadly diverse selection of exterior doors, which tend to reflect the style of the building. Windows and doors deteriorate over time because of their constant use and exposure to rain. The design standards state that original doors shall be retained and preserved. It is not appropriate to install entrance doors or windows that create a false historic appearance or the appearance of an earlier era. With that, we'd like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Ivy. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Jim Luddy, 314 Orange. I have nothing more to add to Ivy's report. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now open the evidentiary proceeding. Does anyone wish to present evidence? No? We'll close the evidentiary proceeding. Deliberations by commissioners? Any comments, anyone?
Me, they just like somebody stuck interior doors in the back of the house.
Yeah. I thought the same thing.
I move to approve with conditions the request to replace 2 exterior doors on the west side of the house at 314 Orange Street and to adopt the proposed findings of fact. Details are shown on the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statement contained in the application, and supplemental materials and statements made at this meeting are part of this request unless otherwise noted. This motion is based on the evidence presented before us the application submittals, testimony, staff report, including the findings of fact. The following conditions shall be applied to ensure compliance with the design standards set forth in the staff report 1 through 4. The proposed request with conditions does comply with the Wilmington design standards for historic district and landmarks and is compatible with the materials, features, design, context, and character of the historic building and the historic district in which it is located, and is congruous with the site, streetscape, and historic aspects of the historic district residential as a whole. Applicable standards, design standards, 1.6, Secretary of the Interior Standards, Standards 2 and 9, 3.2, Windows and Doors, Standard 4 and 13.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 5.
The subject building was built circa 1850 and is a contributing resource to the historic district. The property is located at 113 Dock Street and is within the Central Business District Historic District overlay. In this district, only that which can be seen from the public right-of-way, excluding alleys, is subject to design review. The application before you today is to add a partial width balcony and convert a window to a door on the second floor, to remove faux stone siding from the first floor, and add shutters to some of the windows on the second floor of the building. There are 3 main areas of proposed work. The area denoted with a dashed red line is where the applicant proposes to install a partial width black steel-framed balcony. The second floor window with a blue dashed line around it indicates where the applicant proposes to modify the existing opening into a door to access that proposed balcony. The double door would be a custom wood door to match the existing first floor entry door in design and color. The pink area indicates where the applicant proposes to remove faux stone siding and add a stucco finish to match the rest of the building. The exterior stucco color would be modified to a quarry stone color. Here's a rendering of the proposed exterior modifications. The balcony would measure 22 feet wide by 4 feet deep by 3 feet 6 inches tall. The color would be black, and the image in the bottom right-hand corner is the proposed final design. The new door opening on the second floor would measure 3 feet 2 inches wide by 9 feet 5.5 inches tall. The engineer states that structural observations of the interior wall indicate that there was originally a door opening where the current central window exists. The applicant is also proposing to add shutters to 3 windows on the second floor of the building. The shutters would be Akina Millwork True Fit PVC shutters in the color of Sojourn Blue. According to city records, this building has been substantially altered since its original construction, including changes to the building height and the storefront. Here's a photograph dating from 1979 with the second floor lacking any window or door openings. This is a 1996 photograph showing 4 window openings added to the second floor, a front door modification, an awning added to the storefront, and signage resting above the awning. Here's a photograph added to show you a similar but smaller style balcony currently existing on the adjacent building located at 33 South Front Street. The design standards for existing commercial buildings state that decorative elements added to the building shall be in character with the style and the period of architecture. The standards note that beginning in the late 19th century, many of the commercial buildings had a stucco finish, often with terracotta details. The Secretary of the Interior Standards does not recommend adding balconies at existing window openings or new window openings on primary or other highly visible elevations where balconies never existed unless there is physical or photographic documentation to show that they previously existed. With that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Any questions for staff?
I have one. It looks like the shutters now are supposed to be PVC instead of wood.
That's correct.
Is that allowable on a building of this age?
In the design standards for existing commercial buildings, it actually does state that they should only use synthetic materials that accurately replicate traditional materials.
Okay. And the other question I have, I mean, the basic design of the balcony up there looks fine, but it's supported from above with struts. That looks like a more modern design instead of braces beneath it. Is there a reason for that?
I'll let the engineer touch on that, but I do believe it's an issue with clearance above the sidewalk, that they had concerns about doing it underneath.
Okay, thank you.
And Ivy, is it, you said there is evidence that that middle window was once a door?
Yes, the engineer performed inspection of the interior of this building, and I believe there's 2 photographs in the submittal documents.
Yes,
See what page that's on.
It's showing as a door.
6.
There we go.
Yeah, it's photo F and G in the applicant's submittal. And so he has a couple of photographs there showing the evidence that he collected from the interior wall. And
Was a door, then there must have been some kind of porch or balcony out there at one time.
that's what we were thinking. Obviously, we don't have any indication as to which one it may have been, but given a lot of the balconies that we have seen throughout the district and on the adjacent building, the thought was that it was most likely a balcony.
And then obviously it had shutters, because some of the shutter dogs, shutter holders are still, looks like still on the front of the building and the side.
That's correct. It looks like they're left over. The building did have shutters back in I think from Google Street View, we were able to find that there were shutters at least from around 2008 up to 2012.
Okay, thank you.
The shutters are going to be blue? And are they keeping the color of this building or changing the color of the building?
They are changing the color of the building to, what is it, quarry stone, which is sort of a beige color.
Thank you, Ivy.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is E.B. Pancook. I'm a structural engineer, and I live at 607 Columbia Avenue in Carolina Beach. So as you can look at the building, the interior of the building has been maintained in its original historic character. It's well maintained, but the exterior of the building is not. The applicant would like to work on this building. He'd like to make it a viable building that adds to the character of Wilmington. We know it's a contributing structure, but at the same time, we'd actually like it to, the owner would like it to be I guess, an eye-pleasing part of Wilmington as well. The fall stone face appears to be just like mortar. That was pressed. I've seen that on some other buildings in downtown Wilmington. Over time, that mortar breaks down, starts coming apart. We didn't show great pictures of it, but on the left-hand side of it, there's a large crack going into the building. And until we take that fall stone off, we're not going to be able to really evaluate how serious that crack is to the structural stability of the building. But the owner would like to remove the stucco, the fall stone, put in stucco to match the rest of the building, and change the building color, as well as putting the balcony above. And the owner's been talking about this for a while. I think the last time he brought this up to the HPC, he was talking to Maggie. And that's where we looked inside, and I believe she had also seen that the brick just they don't match the level. So they were built at a different time. Right. There's a vertical joint on the sides, and it's only at that center window. It's not on the two on the sides.
Is the color you're proposing going to be similar to the building that's next door?
No, ma'am. I think we provided a color sample. I'm not sure if they have that. Let me hand that
It
out.
turns out there was not a sample in the packet, but I did print one out, which I'll go ahead and pass around to the commission members so they can see it.
Okay.
And can I just clarify one thing with you?
Yes, ma'am.
In one of the drawings, it looked like the doors were going to be identical, Italianate double doors opening up, just a single panel door on the...
We were planning to make it match the lower floor. I mean, if y'all would like a single door,
No, I'm just
we'd be
asking.
happy to do that, but we were planning to do a double door to fully meet the requirements of the HPC, that it match what was already there.
Okay.
And I'd love to give you all a picture of it, but we obviously can't buy that off the shelf. That's going to have to be
That's okay.
custom made.
Thank you.
Back to my question on the support of the balcony. There's
Yes.
a height problem with lower supports, so they have to do the upper.
The bottom of the balcony will be right at 11 feet. I think I've got the exact height there, and that's on the low side. Really just putting the structure together and designing it, I thought that it would be better to have that support above it, just to where youth couldn't jump up there and grab it and mess around with these braces. That was really the only reason. I've been around young people a little bit, and you never know what kind of trouble they can get in. If y'all would prefer them underneath, I'm sure we can make that modification. We were just thinking about safety, and we kept those vertical supports pretty. Tried to keep them back and not very visible, hopefully. Because we're not trying to highlight that at all. We're just trying to have a safe structure.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question about the rail design. You do submit a picture there, but I presume that for the run of the iron fencing on the balcony, that medallion, the detail will be replicated across, or is that just going to be in the center?
No, that's going to be replicated all across the face of it. And basically, you can see the open panels that are left with the structural vertical supports. We're buying just an off-the-shelf railing assembly that we can put in each and every one of those. And then on the sides, it'll just be vertical railing across there.
Thank you.
But we found similar designs, not just next door, but throughout the...
Yeah, I think I recognize the property that along Water Street.
That's right. Yeah, we found that other one down on Water Street. No, we went around and took a look at what other people had in the area and tried to come up with something that was similar in style. Again, the whole purpose of this project is to improve this building and really bring the added benefit to all the neighbors in this part of downtown Wilmington. We'd like our historic buildings to be viable for the long haul.
EB, question, that baseboard that's in this page that shows the interior where you identify some old joints that
Yes.
may have been a door. Did you look behind the baseboard? Is there anything that goes down farther behind the baseboard there?
I didn't ask them to take the baseboard off, but we moved stuff out of the way. There was some plaster we had to get out of the way, but what we found there was different than any of the other window locations.
Yeah, it's interesting that if you didn't find it on the two adjacent, it's not like this would have been all of a sudden just a taller window.
No, I don't think it was a taller window.
That really wouldn't make sense if you didn't see it in the other adjacent, the other two there.
Yeah, and the bottoms aren't that far up off of the floor anyway. So if it goes down at all, it basically had to have been some sort of door at one point.
Mm-hmm.
The picture doesn't do it as much justice, but in person, the bricks didn't appear to be the same era. They seem to be newer brick there in the middle.
I've got another question. The upper portion, it seems a smooth finish stucco, and the sides is a rather rough style. What's that?
So down below, we are going to make the whole thing one stucco finish.
Smooth.
Smooth. Well, it's not all that smooth in person, but smoother than that fall stone.
Thank you.
So.
We'll now open the evidentiary proceeding. Does anyone wish to come forward and present evidence? We'll close the evidentiary proceeding. Commissioners and deliberation? Motion?
Looks like a good plan to me. I would move to approve with conditions the request to add a partial width balcony and convert a window to a door on the second floor. Excuse me, remove the faux stone siding and add shutters at 113 Dock Street, and to adopt the proposed findings of fact. Details as shown on the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statement contained in this application and supplemental materials and statements made at this meeting are a part of this request. This motion is based on the evidence presented before us, and the application submittals, testimony, staff report, including the findings of fact. The following conditions shall be applied to ensure compliance with the design standards, those set forth in the staff report, numbers 1 through 4. I believe the proposed request with the conditions does comply with the Wilmington design standards for historic districts and landmarks, is compatible with the materials, features, design, context, and character of the historic building and the historic district in which it is located, and it is congruous with the site, streetscape, and historic aspects of the Central Business District historic district overlay as a whole. Applicable design standards 1.6, Secretary of Interior Standards 2, 3, and 9, 3.2, Windows and Doors Standards 9, 12, and 13, 3.9, Utilities and Energy Retrofit Standard 2, and 5.1, Existing Building Standards 2 through 4, and 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.
So this house was built in 1900 and is listed as a contributing resource to the historic district. The property is located at 812 McCumber Alley and is within the historic district residential. In this district, alterations to all facades of a building and site are subject to design review, regardless of whether they can be seen from the public right-of-way. The application before you today is to waive the 365-day stay of demolition to demolish the existing rear deck and in the same general location, construct a rear addition. Here's a view of the rear of the building looking northeast. And here is the existing rear deck the applicant is requesting to remove. In place of the deck, the applicant requests approval to construct a new rear addition. In this photograph, you can see the main house and a 2012 rear addition on the left rear of the house. Outlined in blue is the area proposed for the new addition, which would extend out slightly further than the back wall of the 2012 addition, but be inset from the side exterior wall of the house on the right side. Here's a rendering submitted by the applicant to show how the addition would be constructed. It should be noted that the applicant submitted windows, Anderson 200 series, that are wood protected by vinyl. The applicant did think that they were wood, but staff did discover the discrepancy in reviewing the specifications and let the owner know. Currently, no new window specifications have been submitted to our office, and as such, we did add a condition that any proposed windows be made of wood. I would like to note that I did speak with the applicant this morning, and he has identified new specifications that he will be presenting to you this evening that are appropriate for the historic district and meet the design standards. An interesting fact about this building is that it was moved from its original location. It originally sat at 716 South 7th Street and was moved to the site in 1992, but without the original rear addition. Here's a nice little photograph of the house in transit. The design standards state that additions shall be compatible with the historic building in massing, scale, height, form, size, materials, proportion, fenestration, and roof form. Locate additions to the rear or on an inconspicuous side of the building. Building materials should be compatible with those in the historic building, and synthetic materials are not appropriate. With that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Ivy. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. I concur with Ivy's presentation, and I finally did find a contractor or what's it called, genuine windows, which is all wood, inside, outside, and the mullions are also inside and outside. That conforms to the other the other 8 windows that we have in the house. The only difference on the house windows, they're single pane, of course, from years ago. The new ones have, I believe, double pane. If there's any question, I'm available.
Are you the owner, sir, or the
Yes.
contractor? You are, okay. I would like to better understand the drawing, the rendering that you did with the addition. Looking at the pitch of that existing extension, in your drawing, it looks like it's going to be continuous with the new addition. Given the pitch from that.
If I believe you got some blueprints there, it shows where that roof is just being raised a little bit, that small roof to accommodate. So I guess it's 9 feet, we're going out to 12 feet. So as the roof drops, it will be too low, so they have to raise that roof, that addition roof up a little bit to conform with the door opening.
Okay.
So in the original house, in the main house, it has a window that's like 6 individual pieces of glass over 6 individual pieces
All
of
of them
glass.
6 over 6
Right,
light.
6 over 6. And is that what's being proposed in the back as well? Because I'm
Yes.
seeing on the sketch something that
Yes.
looks like a 3 over 1.
It's just a presentation, but it will be 6 over 6.
6 over 6, okay.
Same size, same height, same width.
If I may, I'd like to note that you are correct, Christopher, that the application does state 3 over 1 windows. So if the new window specifications are acceptable, I'd like to ask that we add a condition stating the new window type and series and configuration for the record. And Mr. Demings, if you would submit those specifications on the record, we'd like to go ahead and put them.
Okay. Who do I submit them to?
I can take them.
To Ivy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now open the evidentiary proceeding. Does anyone wish to come forward and give some evidence? We'll now close that portion. Commissioners' deliberations? Any comments, anyone?
I think it
Motion?
looks good. I would move to approve with conditions the request. What am I doing? Wait a minute. On the-
Looking at 6.
Oh. What?
6, that was item 6.
It is, but my thing reads, stay of demolition.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Oh, okay, I got you, because okay, I'm losing it tonight. Okay, excuse me, let me start again. I move to approve the conditions, the request to waive the 365-day stay of demolition to the rear deck and construct a rear addition at 812 Macomber Alley, and to adopt the proposed findings of fact. Details as shown on the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statement contained in the application, and supplemental materials and statements made at this meeting are a part of this request. This motion is based on the evidence presented before us, the application submittals, testimony, staff report, including the findings of fact. Following conditions shall be applied to ensure compliance with the design standards, those set forth in the staff report, and the addition, number 8 condition that the windows be all wood, no vinyl clad, and be 6 over 6 panes. The proposed request with conditions does comply with the Wilmington design standards for historic districts and landmarks, is compatible with the materials, features, design, context, and character of the historic building and the historic district in which it is located, and is congruous with the site, streetscape, and historic aspects of the Historic District Residential as a whole. Applicable design standards, 1.5, Secretary of the Interior Standards, Standards 2 and 9, 3.2, Windows and Doors, Standards 5, 6, 12, and 13, and 4.1, Additions, Standards 1 through 6.
A second, anyone? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
The Atlantic Paint and Varnish Building was built in 1910, and it is a contributing resource to the Historic District. The property is located at 21 Market Street and is within the Central Business District Historic District overlay. In this district, only that which can be seen from the public right-of-way, excluding alleys, is subject to design review. The application before you today is for restoration of the upper story windows on the front elevation of the building. The second and third floor windows are proposed to be replaced with windows matching the original size and configuration. Here's a 1912 photograph of the building, just 2 years after it was initially constructed. You can see the original window design on the second and third floor, likely steel windows in a 15:1 configuration. Here's another photograph of the early building. However, the exact date of this photo has yet to be determined, but you can see the same 15:1 window configuration as you saw in the 1912 photo. The applicant is proposing to replace the existing windows with Sturgis 700 series single-hung aluminum windows in the color of Hartford green, designed in the same configuration as the original 15:1 windows. Also proposed to be restored is approximately 11 rows of exterior brick and 1 row of brick rowlock to form the windowsill below the second floor windows. Rows of brick were likely removed to accommodate the later window modification and opening expansion. The bricks will be handmade to match the existing exterior brick color and size. The design standards state that windows reflect the architectural and style, age of the building, but also indicate changes in technology. Windows are among the character-defining features of a building. Any replacement windows shall match the original in size, scale, proportion, material, and detail. The design standards note that brick was used for warehouses and commercial buildings beginning in the late 18th century. Replacement of missing features shall match the original materials in composition, size, shape, color, pattern, and texture. With that, I'd like to enter the staff report into the record for tonight's proceedings.
Any questions for staff?
Just one, I guess, because again, we're in the HDO, the aluminum window is on a commercial building is fine.
Yes, for existing commercial buildings, the standard does state that synthetic materials shall be used that authentically replicate original materials. We also found precedent within the historic district with original steel and wood windows being replaced with aluminum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ivy. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Matt Williard. I live at 1242 Heron Run Drive in Wilmington. I'm the architect here representing the owner. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have to say, I'm pretty impressed. I just picture somebody in their backyard making these bricks to match. I mean, that's a pretty good trick.
Hart Builders is going to be the contractor, and a batch of bricks that small is impossible to order from a brickyard. So he's going to hand make those to match the color, and the size is unique too. It's not a typical modular brick.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's pretty amazing.
That's going to be tough. It's going to look great, though.
Ms. Wilson, can you please speak into the microphone?
Yeah. Sturgis is a window company, and they can custom make. They actually make. They specialize in historic aluminum, to simulate wood, and yeah, it's a simulated divided light, so it's a pretty standard mullion detail. So.
Well, my compliments to your design work and the owner's commitment to redo the facade, take it back to the way it was originally.
Thank you. I think this is the first project he's going to undertake after purchasing this building, and hopefully in the future we'll take care of the ground level. So.
This is a good improvement. Thank you.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now open the evidentiary portion of the proceeding. Does anyone wish to come forward and give some evidence? So we'll now close the evidentiary portion of the meeting. Deliberations by the commissioners?
I know we're not, we've been asked through trainings and stuff to not kind of qualify our thoughts with how much we like a building or a design, but I just can't help it. This is going to be striking. I'm really excited about it.
I wish we saw more restorations and not just so many renovations.
Anyone want to do a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move to approve with conditions the request to restore the upper story windows on the front elevation of 21 Market Street and to adopt the proposed findings of fact. Details as shown on the drawings, plans, photographs, submittals, and narrative statements contained in the application and supplemental materials and statements made at this meeting are part of the request unless otherwise noted. This motion is based on the evidence presented before us, the application submittals, testimony, staff report, including the findings of fact. The following conditions shall be applied to ensure compliance with the design standards, those set forth in staff report 1 through 4. The proposed request with conditions complies with the Wilmington design standards for historic districts and landmarks and is compatible with the materials, features, designs, context, and character of the historic building and the historic district in which it's located. It is congruous with the site, streetscape, and historic aspects of the central business district, historic district overlay as a whole. Applicable design standards are 1.6 Secretary of the Interior Standards, Standards 2, 6, and 9, 3.2 Windows and Doors, Standards 6, 12, and 13, 3.3 Masonry Stone, Standards 1 and 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that closes our public portion of housing, and we have a issue of rules of procedure. Melissa, are you going to speak to that?
Unless you have any questions for us.
Just a motion to approve them? Anyone want to do a motion to approve the rules of procedure that we got last month?
I make a motion to approve the rules of procedures that we reviewed the last meeting.
All in favor, or second?
Second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Motion to approve the 2022 meeting dates and submission deadlines?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes. Are there any other matters that anyone wishes to bring up?
If I may have just a moment of your time, I wanted to update the commission on some staffing issues going on in our department. As you may know, Glenn retired. His last day was September 30th. Ron Satterfield has been named our interim director, and he came tonight to make sure that staff is behaving. We're very excited to have Ron acting in that capacity. I also wanted to let you know, you may have noticed that Jeff has not been at the last few meetings. Jeff has been moved full-time to current planning, and we are searching for a second full-time associate planner to help us carry the load with historic preservation. So we're very excited about the idea of having a second full-time person. We only had a portion of Jeff's time. As you probably also know, hiring right now is really tough. So we're on the search. If you know anyone who's qualified, please ask them to apply. So that is going on. The other thing I wanted to update you on is that on Monday, I will be giving a presentation to the City Council Governance Committee regarding the resolution that you all passed for the special enabling legislation. So that will be happening on Monday. Mr. Smith will be there as well. And it is tentatively scheduled to go on the regular agenda of the City Council for their November 3rd business meeting. So if all goes well on Monday, we expect that they will calendar that for consideration for addition to their legislative agenda. So that's it.
Do we know whether it's going to be in person or Zoom?
It will be in person.
Okay.
The governance committee, yes, sir. I sent you a calendar invitation late in the afternoon.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I saw Glenn and his wife getting on their boat last week out at Wrightsville Beach. Looked like they're doing just fine.
That concludes our meeting.
I have one item. I did get a call to address the resolution for this day. Was that referred, did anyone else get that? Was I the only one from Port City Daily to offer a comment?
I got a message, and I asked Ivy who I should refer them to, and I did. Because we're not supposed to be talking to the press, so.
And Ivy, could you making a comment on the resolution that's right. Ivy, could you give an update? I was pleased to learn from Historic Wilmington the breakfast, and we've repeatedly mentioned that we would like to educate realtors, particularly in transfer of historic properties, and I understand you participated in that. And
That's correct. I was one of 5 panelists that presented at a realtor's breakfast last Friday. What was that, the 9th, I believe it was. So it was held at the Community Arts Center. I think that's the name of it, yeah. So there were 5 panelists. I was representing the city, talking to the audience about the local historic district, some of the requirements with regards to certificate of appropriateness applications, and just trying to give a little bit more feedback and insight into the process, how we review them, and which properties are also subject to review requirements. Yeah, it was great. We had a great turnout. I think it was really successful. So I think hopefully we'll be doing that again in the future.
excellent.
Good.
That's critical. Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Oh, man.